So Angela Merkel was born in 1954 in Hamburg, Germany, which is right up here, right by the North Sea, at the top of Germany. You've got the Netherlands to the left, and Luxembourg, and France, and Switzerland, and then Czechoslovakia and Poland over here. So her parents were um, mostly German, but her mother, I believe, was part Polish. Um, but they were definitely living in West Germany at the time. Germany was separated between East and West at this time in 1954 after the war. Um, when she was 8 weeks old, her parents and her moved over to Templin, which is over here in the Eastern Bloc. Her father was a pastor, and he was called to minister over there. People thought they were crazy from going from West Germany to East Germany, but regardless, they went. Um, and they So she grew up in Templin, which is in a more rural forested area, and then she went to school and work in Berlin, where she remains today. She does have a summer home up in Hohenwald, um, but this is a very northern German uh, aspect and East German aspect that she's coming from. So, as a child growing up in East Germany, she had a happy childhood, she says. It was a pleasant upbringing and all of that. But she does remember, however, when the wall went up uh, in 1961. That day is burned into her memory. Everyone was crying, and they had just come back from a trip from West Germany to see her grandparents, and they realized that they were stuck in East Germany and they couldn't get out because they were behind a wall at that point. And the wall, of course, stayed up until 1989 when it came down. Um, and so that had a very big influence in her life, as far as one of her perspectives, as we'll see later on, that she does not believe that people should be walled in or walled out. Um, and so uh, that definitely shaped her leadership style. She excelled in Russian and math. She's fluent in Russian, which you can see later on with Putin. She speaks Russian to Putin. She got a PhD in quantum chemistry in 1986 from the German Academy of Sciences at Berlin. So she was a professor and she worked in the lab, which is also how she met her husband, who is also a scientist. She was married before to Ulrich Merkel, but that marriage was very short and ended in divorce. And then she started a relationship with Joachim Sauer, and she lived with him for a long time before marrying, but she felt that when she became a leader in the CDU that she had to marry because it was more of a Christian conservative political party. So she joined the Christian Democratic Union Party, which was a little bit of a surprise because they are primarily a conservative, not in American style, but in German style, and predominantly Catholic and male. And so she was one of the first women Protestants to be a leader in the CDU. Angela, she rose fairly quickly in her leadership roles. She started out as a volunteer. One day she walked into the party office and just wanted to help, so she started filing and things like that. And she just pretty soon worked her way up, and she was given higher positions as she went along. Cole took her under his wing, and but then he had a scandal at one point, and she actually stood up to him and told him that he needed to resign. And so that's where she first gained attention because she was very underestimated at the beginning of her rise to power. She she's not charismatic at all. She was seen as, a mousy kind of woman. But when she stood up to Cole, that was really the start of her climb to chancellor. And so it wasn't long before she was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany in 2005 for the first time. As far as personality goes, Angela is often typed as an ISTJ. She's introverted. She is, of course, a scientist, so she's pragmatic. She's careful, cautious. She likes to be very independent. Here you see in her picture that throughout her chancellorship, she still remained independent, as in she did her own shopping. So she lived in an apartment in Berlin near her offices, and she would go to the grocery store on her own with her security team trailing behind her. But that also kept her in touch with the people, and she actually knew how much things cost and how things worked, unlike some recent examples of people that in government over here that we can see that were just completely out of touch with things. And she also is always seen as very serious and somber, but she is reported to have a very good sense of humor in private. And that can be seen in some of the pictures as she's joking around and smiling. So it's a professional demeanor she has in some circumstances, but definitely has a good sense of humor as well. So as a leader, she follows what you would assume as a scientific kind of style. She is pragmatic and cautious. Some would argue that she was too slow to make decisions and that she didn't do anything daring or visionary, but she was very stable, definitely not charismatic. They thought her speeches were boring most of the time. You can see from this picture here, this is her token or signature hand motion, which is called the Merkle diamond. And so when this came about as part of her personality, she was very uncomfortable in the spotlight at the beginning, and she didn't know what to do with her hands. So she developed this hand posture, and you can see it everywhere, and that she that made her comfortable, and she never had to worry about what to do with her hands from there on out. And as I said before, she had been underestimated before she rose to power, but she is very tough, strong-willed, very conscientious. Duty is very important to her, as would be befitting somebody from East Germany, and she's very process-oriented as a leader. In her relationships with others, we've already said that she's very private, introvert, not one that has a ton of friends at all, but she is accommodating with others, modest, a consensus builder, and a negotiator, and that's what she was known as most. Now, in the German government, of course, you have several parties, and so you have to be a consensus builder to have any sort of political savvy, because you have a kind of a collaboration between the different parties. It's not the two-party rule like we have here. So, but she excelled at that, and excelled as being a negotiator as well. She famously got along well with Obama. At first she was skeptical of him, but she became to respect him greatly, and they got along well. If you remember this instance, she did not really appreciate President Bush and his sudden shoulder rub at all, which it's a little funny in several ways. First of all, Germans are not known for being overly touchy-feely and overtly friendly, and especially in a government situation or a public situation, this was a definite intrusion into her privacy and her personal space for sure. She didn't appreciate this, even though he probably didn't understand how she was going to react at first. Then you see her relationship here with Putin, as I said before, that she speaks fluent Russian and she would speak Russian with Putin. But Putin being who he is, here you see a picture. Angela has a very strong fear of dogs, and he knew that, of course, and so, but he aggressively allowed his dog to be unleashed in her presence. But she purportedly held her own in this situation. She also held her own at the G7 summit with Trump, and was widely praised for the negotiating she did there and kind of her political savvy in that situation. She also gets along well with other women, and of course there's some very prominent women leaders here in this picture. You've got Sanna Marin of Finland, Sophie Willems of Belgium, Ursula von der Leyen, who I can't remember what country she's from. I want to say Denmark, or yes, Denmark. Anyway, so those are some of there's a lot of women leaders actually in Europe. We just don't see a lot of them very much in our American news. So some of the things that happened during her tenure before she stepped down in 2021. First, there was the Euro crisis of 2008 with Greece, and she was widely praised for, in the end, saving the euro. But she was also criticized some for being slow and deliberate about it. And at one point, she was rejecting what the other leaders wanted, and she had to be brought around. But in the end, she was credited with saving the euro in that crisis. Then there was the nuclear power decisions. In 2010, she had decided to further the nuclear power plant contracts in Germany. But then in 2011, when Fukushima happened, she reversed that decision. She came to a different understanding, and she decided that that was not the way she wanted to keep going. So at different points, she was criticized. She was criticized for flip-flopping, as they thought, but you could look at it as flip-flopping, or you can look at it as she realized after Fukushima what could happen, and so she changed her mind and made a different decision. Then in 2015, the immigrant crisis, she made the decision to allow 1 million immigrants in, and was criticized for that as well, even within her own party. But she felt that she had to do that as a human and as a Christian, and also this is where her East German influence came in, because she felt that it was clearly wrong to keep people walled out, as she stated. So she stood her ground on that and let those people in. During the pandemic, she was a very strong leader. This is where her stability really shined, because especially as a scientist, she, very early on, she took control. She decided what to do. She did put, strict measures in place, but it did keep Germany from having a very high death rate. Their death rate for a long time was low compared to other areas. So this was seen as a big time of strength in her leadership. She had several nicknames as chancellor, when one was Mutti, which means mom, translated from German, and so they affectionately called her Mutti, because she was mother-like to the country for a long time. And this picture you see here was when she was um, at the start of the pandemic. She very rarely ever did this. This is one of the only times she ever did this, but she sat down and had an address to the German people about the situation of the pandemic. And I remember watching this myself when she did this in America, because it was such a strong leadership statement and it made an impact on me. It made me feel like she knew what she was doing and in control. And so this was a very big leadership moment for Angela Merkel right here. So in 2021, in December 8th, she stepped down as after 16 years as Chancellor of Germany. Scholz came in, and it was a very easy transition. Seemed very easy compared to what we went through. There are a couple of things that she is known for. First of all, she was the first woman Chancellor of Germany. She was the first East German Chancellor of Germany, the youngest Chancellor of Germany. She was 51 years old when she became Chancellor, and she was the first one to leave on her own terms in recent memory. So that is all I have, and I hope that you have enjoyed this little show about Angela Merkel.